let's look at that why first. And I think this is a very important one, in particular in Australia. There is new legislation, sustainability legislation, that is coming into force 1st of January next year. And what we see there is that a lot of companies now, seeing that this is becoming real, are starting to worry about, what do I need to do? It might not hit me on the 1st of January, but maybe the year after or the year after that. And maybe I'm in a value chain with other suppliers, customers, investors that are asking for particular information. You might already have a good idea of what the Australian Sustainability Reporting Standards entail. You might have no idea. So we thought it is worthwhile to put up this slide and have a little bit of a really brief kind of chat about it, but mostly from a point of view, this is generally why people start thinking about budget, because it's becoming real, it's becoming compliance. It's a mandatory requirement now on the climate side. So I think that's a key thing to unpack here as well. We're looking at two standards. We're looking at what they now call AASB 1, which is our general requirements. So think about working out which sustainability matters are material to your business. And once they are, disclose on those particular matters. That's adopted in Australia as a voluntary standard. And then there is the climate-related disclosures, AASB 2, and that is a mandatory standard. So that is something you'll have to do if you meet the thresholds there. Now, with that in mind, Jess, thinking about this, what do you see happening? Do you see that people are starting to panic? Is everyone well prepared for this, or anywhere in between? What are your thoughts with this coming into place now? What's happening?
Yeah, I think the main thing that we are seeing, which I hinted towards, was that sustainability teams are often under-resourced for the work that's on their plate. And for many years, they have been doing usually some form of carbon accounting. And I personally don't think that really matters whether it was in a platform or whether it was in Excel, because the main trend across that is that we were doing it in a world where it was voluntary. So if you had someone in sustainability doing their best effort to understand the protocol, doing their best effort to get in the electricity and the fuel data and their best estimate on hotspots and mapping their emissions, that was really what the organisation expected. And what has happened, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, as of essentially right now, this week, is that we now know that the risk profile of that has changed. And it actually, in some ways, I think we're seeing sustainability teams in two camps. One is feeling really overwhelmed because they're already spending 70% of their time trying to do this kind of reporting that's becoming mandatory. And they're feeling like maybe there has never been this level of oversight on the work they've done. And they're feeling quite nervous about the limited assurance auditors coming in, or even just the CFO looking at numbers that no one else has ever looked at in a really long time properly. But we have the other camp that's a little bit excited because they've been trying to handball a bit of this work on to the other departments. And now that this is an accounting standard, and the Australian Accounting Standards Board approved the standards last week, now that that's happening, when they're talking about budget next year, they're really starting to say, it's not just what I would like in my small under-resourced sustainability team. If I am now passing some of this reporting work onto the department that is also responsible for the rest of the annual report, we're starting to have conversations around efficiency, auditability, completeness, reducing costs when it does get to audit time. They're the conversations that I now see going on. And I think that's probably a good camp to be in.
And I totally agree. I think the key here is that, as you flagged, with this becoming now a mandatory requirement, we really see that change there from a nice to have, because investors and stakeholders would like to see this information, and something is better than nothing, going toward, we have to have this, it's a need, it needs to be done properly, it needs to be assurable, and we need to make sure that we do this the right way. So suddenly that opens a whole different discussion, and that flows into budgeting as well. We need to do this properly. What tools, what resources, what training do we need to get on top of this? So a really good starting point, I think, for our discussion today.
100%. And I think that upskilling piece is really key as well, because as you have departments saying, this is brand new, what are we doing? At least a part of that budget discussion is, well, how do we actually build confidence internally that we do know what we want to do next?
Exactly.